Today we're going to talk about the games people play. John 𝐬𝐒𝐿 here from 𝐒𝐿eadership.co.uk. So The Games People Play was a book written in 1964 by Eric Berne, MD, and Eric Berne's known as the father of transactional analysis. So if you hear reference to parent, adult, child and TA, that's what we're talking about. And the central game at the heart of human behaviour is the game between acceptance and rejection. We're very, very deeply wired for that. And let's talk about where that game comes from. So let's imagine we're back in the Stone Age. We're still actually in Africa at this point in our evolution. And if I'm on my own and I'm approaching a settlement, the number one thing I want from those people is to be accepted. Because if that group, that tribe rejects me, then chances are when I fall asleep, I'll be eaten by a predator, or I won't find water, or I won't find food and I'll starve to death. But either way, the prognosis is not good if I am rejected. So we're very, very deeply wired to seek acceptance, and the games Eric Berne writes about in his book are all about acceptance and rejection. Now, before we go on to that, let's just go to the other side, so to the people at the settlement. So as I'm approaching the settlement, those people are trying to make a judgment about me. Now, it takes a 40th of a second for an image to reach our retina. So in literally the blink of an eye, we're deciding whether that person is a friend or are they a foe. And within that friend or foe judgments, there's two distinctions that are important. The first one is this person trustworthy? In other words, if I let this person into our settlement, will I wake up in the morning to find that our food has been stolen? Will they kill me in the night? Will they rape, my woman? All this kind of stuff, or is going to be some sort of bad behaviour. And then the second judgment I'm trying to make is one of competency, because I can't afford to take someone in who's going to be a burden. So if they're not competent, they haven't got a competency, I'm looking at, have they got flints in a pouch? Have they got pelts that they're carrying? What kind of spear have they got? How can I determine whether this person has value that they're going to bring to the community? So those two judgments, trustworthiness and competency, are still judgments we make today in the blink of an eye. So it's worth bearing in mind, what is the first impression you give to others? Are you competent, or are you perceived as needy? Are you trustworthy, or are you untrustworthy? Yeah, what's the impression that you give? So let's go back to these games. So one of the popular games that I come across is the tall poppy syndrome. So you've all heard the little kids, I don't know quite, it would be called the nursery rhyme, but it's the one about the green bottles, or would be the kids in the bed and the little one said roll over, and we all rolled over and one fell out, and so you go on. But these things are about acceptance and rejection. And the tall poppy syndrome is a game played to cut down the one at the, we want to cut down the one person so that we bring them back into the fold of the majority, and then, quote, we're all the same. So typically these games happen at school, where the bright kid who may not be particularly confident, might be seen as a bit nerdy, gets picked on by kids who feel that they're shown up by this brighter person. And the brighter person need not have done anything wrong, but they attack the ire of the gang for being different. And this is the tall poppy game, where they try and cut you down so that you, quote, fit in. And the reason for that is things like the teacher may be giving more attention to the brightest child. It may not be overtly, but other kids will feel it. Or the other kid getting better marks, and I don't get such good marks, so again, I might be in that group that attacks you for doing better than me. And all this, what you might say is stupid childish stuff, carries on into adult life as well. And so, not surprisingly, we find people who are very bright with a high degree of intelligence, maybe a lot of qualifications, but actually lacking in confidence because all they felt through no fault of their own is being attacked by others certainly during their school years, maybe as well within the family. So if one sibling is bright academically and the other one isn't, and then depending on how the parents react, you get a reaction between the siblings. So it's really, really important to understand the dynamics, particularly in your own family, obviously, and not to favour one versus the other. In my own experience at school, I know of a lad who actually very seriously tried to commit suicide because his older brother was, a real scholar, was going to go to, I forget which one, Oxford or Cambridge, under much pressure from mother to be the same. He just happened to be like the best athlete the school had ever seen, but that wasn't enough for mummy. She wanted him to be an academic scholar, which he was never going to be in a million years. It was just by chance someone wondered why the bathroom was occupied for so long, looked through the keyhole, and the white walls of the bathroom were red with his blood. And very fortunately, ambulance, and they saved his life. But that's the extreme. But it's the same dynamic. It's about acceptance and rejection. So whatever you do, do not reject your own children. They're doing the best they can with the resources that they have. If you've been on the receiving end of that, recognize that actually the game that you're playing is hurting yourself. You don't need to have your life defined by the perceptions of others. And if you're one of these people trying to cut down the tall poppy, just ask yourself, what on earth are you doing? Why do you need to do that? Wouldn't it be better to focus your energy on improving yourself? So lots of dynamics in here that make human life a little bit more complicated sometimes than it needs to be. But if you've been on the rough end of that and would love to let that stuff go, that's the stuff that I help clients with. And some of these people are surprisingly senior, surprisingly wealthy, qualified, all kinds of things. But in their past is something which is bugging them and stopping them from feeling as free and as happy as perhaps they deserve. Another popular game, in fact Steve Peters talks about this in his book The Chimp Paradox, is the Snow White syndrome. It's quite an interesting game. Snow White tends to be played by the girls, though I imagine it can be played by boys too. And this is the person that is the family martyr, that always has to be kept busy, and there's lots of sighs and huffing and puffing and tiredness because this poor martyr is unappreciated despite all their hard work. Now, where this probably comes from is originally seeking approval from one parent or other, never getting it, because guess what, the parents probably weren't approved of themselves. So it becomes a pointless game, and then into adulthood, and all this person ends up doing is wearing themselves out, and everybody else will find them hard work and a bit too dramatic, so keep their distance. And then this martyr will wonder why, I'm not as loved as I should be for the contribution that I'm making. So you get to see how some of these games are really counterproductive and have their roots somewhere else. So if you're one of those people striving for mother's or father's approval, and you won't be surprised to know these games continue long after the death of the parent if we're not careful. Just ask yourself, how much is this really serving you? If you're a house-proud person, you want to live in a nice, clean, shiny place, that's cool. But at what expense is it to yourself and everybody around you? If dad or mum isn't going to approve you or hasn't approved of you so far, are they actually going to approve of you? In fact, have you ever asked them, is their approval just your perception, or is it that you haven't actually had approval in the way that means something to you? So much of the time this can be solved by just going and having that conversation with the parents and to figure out where their heads were at and where yours was at and why there seems to be some kind of mismatch. If they've already gone, chances are the best thing, just let it go. Just release it. And if you need help to do that, then give me a call, I can help you do that. That's relatively straightforward. Let's talk about the alpha wolf. So one of the destructive men's games. So some men very much leading with ego. They're the best and they won't let you forget it. These are the type of men who intimidate their own children. I've seen plenty of people where, you know, they want to spoil the child because it's their son, but also they need to dominate the child because they're the top dog, and you end up with a very confused and spoilt child who really doesn't know one end from the other. And some of these spoilt children I've even met in their 50s, because the inconsistency of the father as the dominant figure has left them totally confused about their own identity and their own capability. So alpha wolf can be very destructive in the home. On the opposite end of the scale, you get kids who then mimic the father, so that's called the modelling, and end up with the same destructive behaviour against others that their father had. But most of the time, in terms of the experience that I've had dealing with people, the kids tend to be more hurt by that kind of behaviour than benefit from that kind of behaviour. In the workplace, the alpha wolves are the ones that the HR department are clutching their foreheads about, because this is the guy that's the liability in the organisation. Now, if you've got those kind of people in your organisation, they will be running your organisation at your expense for their benefit. So they tend towards more of the psychopathic. So when their personal interests aligned with the interests of the organisation, then they will be pushing forward. And if there's collateral damage on the way, well, those people are in the way and they weren't aligned with us. But when that person doesn't have the answer, that's when the real problems start. So in a static market, and markets used to be more static in the old days, you could have some of these people seen as being great CEOs, but actually they were what I call one-man companies. So everybody jumped when they said jump, and that worked for a while, but now it definitely doesn't work. One person cannot possibly know all the answers. So you need to be a collaborator rather than an alpha wolf. So really, if you've got those people in your organisation fighting amongst themselves, trying to boss everybody around, tell them what to do, you better be sure that they actually do seriously know what they're doing, or are they taking you to an early corporate grave?